What would you do if the life you built for 17 years, the home, the cars, the comfort, the certainty, all existed only because your family paid for it? And what would you do if the man who enjoyed every drop of that privilege suddenly woke up one morning and told you he was taking a second wife? Would you fight? Would you beg? Would you walk away? Or would you do what I did? This is the story of how my husband, the man I protected, supported, and honored, pushed me to make the most painful, powerful decision of my life. A decision that shocked Manchester. A decision my husband will never forget. My name is Eleanor Vance, though for the longest, most suffocating time I was simply Mrs. Oliver Vance, a name that felt less like an identity and more like a title, a job description. Before that, I was Eleanor Finch, daughter of Sir Alistair Finch. And that, you see, is where the story truly begins. It always begins with the money, doesn't it? Even when we pretend it's about love. My family isn't just wealthy. We are part of the old, established bedrock of London's financial elite. My father, Sir Alistair, is a titan of industry, a man whose name on a letterhead commands immediate respect and quiet fear. He didn't inherit his empire. He built it from the gritty determination of a post-war grammar school boy, and his sweat, as I would later describe it, was the potent, indelible ink that wrote the story of my entire life. We lived in a sprawling white stuccoed Georgian mansion in Knightsbridge, a stone's throw from Harrods, where the very air seems to hum with the frequency of money and expensive perfume. My mother, Lady Beatrice, is the quintessential society matriarch, flawless, elegant, and utterly, cripplingly obsessed with appearances. She taught my sister Isabel and me the fine art of being seen but not truly known, of deploying a smile as a shield, and of understanding that a woman's greatest asset was not her mind or her heart, but a respectable and preferably advantageous marriage. Darling, she would say, adjusting a stray hair on my head, passion is for novels. Stability is for life. I met Oliver Vance when I was 22, fresh from a business degree at the London School of Economics that my father had insisted upon. You must understand the language of the world, Ellie, he'd rumbled, his voice like rocks grinding together, even if you never have to speak it yourself. Oliver was intoxicating. He wasn't from our world, and that was his primary allure. He was devastatingly handsome in a way the floppy-haired boys of my circle were not. He had a raw, restless energy, an ambition that crackled around him. He came from a modest, respectable family in Coventry, and he had a hunger in his dark eyes that I, in my gilded naivety, mistook for a passion for life. In reality, it was a passion for a different life. My life. Hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell for more stories. I saw him as a project, a beautiful wild thing I could tame and elevate. He would in turn adore me for it, grateful for the world I had opened to him. What a profound, spectacular fool I was. Was my naivety a crime or just a symptom of a life lived behind high walls and manicured hedges? Is there a difference? My parents were hesitant. My mother, Beatrice, wrinkled her perfectly powdered nose at his lack of pedigree, at the way he held his fork just a little too tightly. My father, Alistair, saw the more practical deficit, a lack of capital. He saw a man with ambition but no assets. But I was 22 and believed I was in love, and I was their darling daughter, the compliant one. So they relented. More than relented, they took over. They didn't just approve of the marriage. They funded it, orchestrated it, and built it from the ground up, just like one of my father's commercial property developments. Our wedding was the society event of the year, a breathtakingly lavish affair at the Dorchester, with floral arrangements that cost more than a small car. And then came the settlement, as my father called it. The term delivered with the same brisk finality he used when closing a hostile takeover. It was, I see now, a business deal. I was the asset and Oliver was the new and proven CEO of my personal life. We were gifted a magnificent 5-bedroom double-fronted Victorian villa in Kensington. A 5-bedroom semi-detached house in Hale Barnes. 2 cars, a sleek black Range Rover Vogue and a Jaguar F-Type. And my father placed Oliver on a monthly allowance. Not because Oliver worked for him. Not because we needed it. Just to support him as the new son-in-law. It was tradition. In my family, generosity is how we show love. And I loved my husband. Or at least, the man I thought he was. On a quiet tree-lined street where Russian oligarchs and hedge fund managers were our neighbors. The deed, A crucial, life-altering detail that I would only come to appreciate 17 years later, was placed in a discretionary trust under my name. My father's one act of profound caution. "A woman should always have a door she holds the only key to, Eleanor," he'd said, and I had smiled and not understood the gravity of his words. The two cars we were given: a sleek black Range Rover Vogue for me, the perfect vehicle for ferrying the future Finch-Vance dynasty around the royal borough, and a Jaguar F-Type for Oliver, a screaming metallic blue symbol of the status he had now acquired by marriage. It was a toy, a pacifier for his ego. And then there was the salary. This was the most insidious part of the arrangement, the slow-acting poison that would atrophy his soul. My father's company is Finch Holdings, a sprawling conglomerate with interests in property development and global logistics. I worked there in a comfortable but largely ceremonial role in the marketing department, a position designed to give my days structure without the burden of actual responsibility. Oliver, who had been a mid-level manager at a logistics firm in Slough, was not given a job. My father, in a move of what he thought was delicate generosity, didn't want Oliver to feel like a mere employee. Instead, he was placed on a consultant's retainer. It was a salary, a very generous one, paid directly into his personal account at the start of every month, for doing absolutely nothing. It was support, my father explained, a way to allow him to find his feet and pursue his own ventures without the vulgarity of financial pressure. The problem is, when you remove all pressure, you often extinguish the fire. Oliver never found his feet. He found the Sunningdale Golf Club, the exclusive members' lounges of Pall Mall, and the fine art of the 3-hour lunch. The hunger in his eyes was satiated, and what was left was a placid, entitled emptiness. He was, however, impeccable in his role as son-in-law. With my father he was deferential and attentive, learning to talk about market trends and political headwinds as if he were a player. With my mother he was a master of charm, always remembering her favorite vintage of Sancerre and laughing with convincing warmth at her tired anecdotes about Ascot in the 80s. They adored him. He was their success story. They had plucked him from the dreary Midlands and polished him into a presentable gentleman. In their eyes, his seamless integration was a testament to their own benevolence and good taste. They never saw the man he was when the heavy oak door of our Kensington home clicked shut. They never saw the subtle dismissals, the vacant eyes when I spoke of my day, the way he'd scroll through his phone while our children were trying to show him their school projects, their faces falling with each passing second of his indifference. We had 4 children, as the script of our perfect life demanded. They came in a neat, symmetrical package, 2 boys and 2 girls. Leo, my eldest, now 16, is a mirror of my own quiet, observant nature, with a sketchbook always in his hand and a storm of unspoken thoughts behind his eyes. Then came Chloe, 14, bright and achingly eager to please, her barometer of self-worth calibrated to the approval of others, a trait she inherited directly from me to my eternal shame. Finally, the twins Mia and Sam, who had just turned 10. They were the noisy, chaotic, joyful heart of our home. They were my world, my purpose, my reason for getting up every morning and meticulously polishing the Fabergé. They were the reason I became the good and submissive wife. They're my pride. My world. What does that even mean, a good wife? For me, it meant a life of cultivated silence. It meant never raising my voice because arguments were unseemly. It meant ensuring the house ran with the silent, frictionless precision of a Swiss watch, managed by a housekeeper, Maria, and a nanny, Sophie, but overseen by me. It meant hosting flawless dinner parties where Oliver could hold court, his anecdotes growing grander and more embellished with each passing year, fueled by my father's money and my silent, smiling compliance. It meant I managed the entire universe of our children's lives. School runs in the Range Rover, parent-teacher evenings where I'd sit alone, doctor's appointments, scheduling tutors, organizing birthday parties with ponies and bouncy castles. Oliver was the absentee chairman of the board of our family. He'd show up for the annual Christmas card photo op but leave the day-to-day operations and emotional labor entirely to his unpaid CO. Me. He has not been the best husband. Such a sterile, forgiving, pathetic phrase for 17 years of emotional erosion. It wasn't about grand, cinematic betrayals, not at first. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts, each one so small you could almost convince yourself it hadn't happened. It was the anniversary he forgot, only to have his secretary rush order a bouquet of generic lilies that afternoon, the card signed in her perfect cursive. It was the way he'd talk about me to his friends, a tone of fond, weary condescension that marked me as a pretty simple creature he was graciously saddled with. "Ellie's a saint," he'd say, "doesn't have a head for business but she's wonderful with the children." It was the family holidays to sprawling villas in Tuscany or beachfront mansions in the south of France, all paid for by Finch Holdings, where he would spend more time on the phone to his golfing buddies, his voice booming across the infinity pool, than he would spend with his own children who had learned not to bother him. I suspected other women, of course. How could I not? There were too many late nights he blamed on networking, a concept that had become meaningless since he had no actual work to do. There was the recurring scent of a perfume that wasn't mine, something sharp and cheap, clinging to his jacket. There was the sudden guarded secrecy with his phone, the way he'd angle it away from me if I walked into the room. But I never had concrete proof, and what would I have done with it anyway? Confront him? 'Cause a scene? My mother's voice would echo in my head, a ghostly mantra of my upbringing. One must maintain decorum, Eleanor. Men have their proclivities. It's often meaningless. A wise woman knows when to look away. So I looked away. For 17 years I looked away. For years I noticed the small cracks. The late night calls. The emotional distance. The dismissive tone. But I chose peace. For the kids. For stability. For that illusion of a home. 17 years of marriage. And he was never the best husband. Yet I stayed. I focused on my children, on my rose garden, on the sterile satisfaction of my charity committee work. I convinced myself that this was enough. That the stability, the beautiful home, the lack of overt, vulgar conflict, was a fair trade for passion, for respect, for genuine partnership. I chose to just let it be. But wasn't that choice a form of surrender? A slow, willing walk into my own obsolescence? When you look away for long enough, do you eventually become invisible? The quiet, predictable hum of our life, the rhythm of school terms and half-term holidays, of Ascot and Wimbledon, of charity galas and shooting weekends, was shattered on a Tuesday evening in April. It was raining outside, a miserable, persistent London drizzle that matched the grey monotony my life had become. The children were upstairs, ostensibly doing their homework. Maria had cleared the dinner plates and gone home. Oliver and I were in the formal sitting room of our Kensington home, a room designed by a top London interior decorator, all muted greys, velvets, and expensive, uncomfortable furniture that was meant to be looked at, not lived in. He was swirling a ridiculously expensive 25-year-old single malt in a heavy crystal tumbler. Another Christmas gift from my father. He didn't look at me when he started speaking. He never did during what he considered to be important conversations. He stared into the fireplace, where a gas fire flickered with a synthetic, lifeless warmth. "Eleanor," he began, his voice preternaturally calm, measured, as if he were about to discuss a minor adjustment to our investment portfolio. "I've been doing a great deal of thinking lately. About my life. About my legacy. About what it all means." I waited, my heart beginning a slow, heavy thud against my ribs like a muffled drum. I'd heard this preamble before. It usually preceded the announcement of a new, expensive hobby. The time he wanted to buy a vintage Aston Martin, the year he decided to join a polo club. "I'm 45 years old," he continued, still gazing at the fake flames. "I have 4 wonderful children. A beautiful home. An enviable life by any standard. But I feel unfulfilled. Spiritually." I nearly choked on the sip of Earl Grey tea I'd just taken. Oliver, whose only spiritual activity was calculating his handicap and worshipping at the altar of the 19th hole, was talking about his soul. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. "I've been exploring my faith more deeply," he said, and this was new. He was vaguely Church of England, attending Christmas and Easter services with the same grudging duty he reserved for a dental appointment. "And I've come to a decision. I know it's a bit unconventional by modern Western standards, but it feels right. It feels honest." He finally turned to look at me, and his eyes were clear, bright, and utterly devoid of guilt or apprehension. They were the eyes of a man who had already convinced himself of his own righteousness, who had recast his selfishness as enlightenment. "I'm going to take a second wife. Just like that. No explanation. No discussion. No scum. Have you ever experienced a moment so shocking that the world goes silent? Like your body is frozen but your mind is screaming? That was me. I stared at him, waiting for a punchline. A wink. Some sign that he wasn't serious. But Oliver doesn't joke. The Faberge egg didn't just crack. It exploded. Shards of enamel and gold leaf and 17 years of self-delusion flew through the air in a silent, glittering detonation. But on the outside I was perfectly still, frozen. I had been trained for this my whole life, hadn't I? To absorb shocks. To maintain decorum. To be the calm center of a storm. My first thought absurdly was of my mother. A wise woman knows when to look away. But this wasn't a sordid affair in a hotel room. This wasn't something to be looked away from. This was a public declaration. A press release. He wasn't just cheating on me, he was formally, structurally replacing me. Or rather, adding a newer, younger model while keeping the classic one in the garage for reliability and spare parts. I see, I said. My voice was a stranger's, thin and distant, as if it were coming from the other side of the room. He seemed visibly relieved by my lack of hysterics. He had clearly braced himself for tears, for shouting, for the messy, inconvenient drama of a woman's pain. He had a script ready for that scene. My catatonic calm threw him off. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't ask who she was. Because I knew something he clearly forgot. Everything he enjoyed, the house, the cars, the comfort, came from my family. Not him. And from that moment, my own plans started forming quietly, carefully, powerfully. I didn't react. I didn't ask questions. I didn't fight. Have you ever stayed silent not because you're weak but because your silence is louder than any argument? That was me. I watched him walk away, feeling strangely calm. If he wanted to embarrass me, he would regret it. I'm glad you're being so understanding, so mature about this, he said, a small, patronizing smile touching his lips. Nothing will change for you and the children, of course. This will remain your home. Your lifestyle will be exactly the same. I will be a husband to you both. It's perfectly common in many cultures, you know. It's about building a larger, stronger family. The sheer, unadulterated, stratospheric arrogance of it. The audacity. He expected me to like her. He expected me to welcome my own usurper into the life my family had built, the home that was legally mine. He expected me to sit by and watch him start a new family, funded by my father's money, in the house that my children called home. He had mistaken my years of submission for congenital weakness. He had mistaken my silence for acceptance. And that was the single greatest miscalculation of his pampered, cosseted life. Did he really think I was that pathetic? That after 17 years of being a decorative accessory, I had forgotten I was the daughter of Sir Alistair Finch, a man who dismantled his business rivals for breakfast and flossed his teeth with their shredded contracts? In that moment something inside me shifted. A tectonic plate, deep in the bedrock of my soul, ground into a new position. The good, submissive wife, the smiling, nodding, accommodating Eleanor, died a quiet, unmourned death on that gray velvet sofa. And in her place something else was born. Something cold, clear, and methodical. I didn't feel rage, not then. That would come later. What I felt was a strange, liberating clarity. He had finally given me the one thing I never had. A reason. A justification. An exit strategy with a moral mandate. When? I asked, my voice still unervingly steady. The traditional wedding is in a few weeks. Her family is from Birmingham, quite devout Muslims. It'll be a Nikah ceremony. Then the white wedding and the main reception here in London at the end of next month. A big celebration. He was dancing at his own wedding reception. That was the image that flashed into my mind. Oliver in a bespoke Tom Ford suit, dancing with his new young, spiritual wife. And in that same flash my plan was born. Not in pieces but fully formed, downloaded into my brain like a blueprint. A perfect, beautiful, intricate act of demolition. All right, Oliver, I said, standing up. I looked down at him, this man I had given my youth to, this handsome, hollow stranger living in my house. If that's what you feel you must do for your spiritual fulfillment. He beamed, his relief so palpable it was nauseating. Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you. I knew you'd be sensible. You are a truly remarkable woman. Yes, I said, turning to leave the room, my back straight, my steps even. I am. He had no idea. Have you ever looked at your life and wondered, when did things get this bad? When did the man who once held your hand with tenderness start holding secrets instead? That was me. standing in the same house my father gifted us, the same house where I brought 4 children into this world, and realizing I was slowly disappearing. Not physically, emotionally, spiritually, piece by piece. My plans were already on the ground, firming up with every silent, furious step I took up the carpeted staircase. The next morning I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I made the children's breakfast as usual, the familiar routine a comforting shield. I kissed them goodbye as they left for school with Sophie. Then I drove the Range Rover to my office at Finch Holdings. But instead of going to the marketing department on the 12th floor, I took the silent wood-paneled private elevator to the 25th floor, my father's office. His executive secretary, a formidable woman named Judith Gable who had been with him for 40 years and knew where every corporate body was buried, looked up in surprise over her spectacles. I rarely came up here unannounced. Is he free, Judith? I asked, my voice betraying nothing. He's in a meeting with the board of a company he's about to acquire, Eleanor, but for you, of course. She understood the hierarchy. I was family. I walked in. My father was at his vast, brutalist mahogany desk, the entire London skyline a dramatic, power-affirming backdrop behind him. He looked up, his sharp blue eyes, the one thing I had inherited from him, instantly assessing my expression. He missed nothing. Ellie. What's wrong? I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I laid it out for him with the same cold, clinical clarity Oliver had used on me. The spiritual awakening. The second wife. The plans for the 2 weddings. The utter, breathtaking disrespect. Not just to me but to him, to the Finch name, to the entire foundation upon which Oliver's life was built. For a long moment my father said nothing. He tented his long fingers, his gaze fixed on me, his expression unreadable. Then I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Not just anger but a deep, primal, paternal fury. He had bought and paid for my husband, and the merchandise was not only defective, it was publicly embarrassing him. It had insulted his daughter. The house in Kensington, he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. The deed is in your trust. You are the sole beneficiary and trustee. He has no legal claim on it. I know, I said. I called my solicitor, Mr. Abernathy, this morning before I came here. He confirmed it. My father nodded, a flicker of approval. The cars. Both registered to me through the trust. The salary, he spat the word like it was something foul. That retainer stops today. I'll have accounting deal with it. It will be his last payment. He paused and a slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. It was a smile I had seen him use in boardrooms right before a corporate execution. What are you going to do, Ellie? He wasn't asking me what he should do. He was asking for my strategy. He was testing me. He wanted to see if I was just a casualty or if I was truly his daughter. I'm not going to do anything, I said calmly, meeting his intense gaze. Not yet. I am going to be the good, submissive, understanding wife he thinks I am. I will not object. I will let him have his Nika. I will let him plan his white wedding. I will let him feel secure, magnanimous, and victorious. I took a steadying breath. And on the day of his white wedding, while he is at the reception celebrating his new life, I'm going to dismantle his old one. Piece by piece. I'm going to take back every single thing that has your sweat on it. My father stared at me for a full 10 seconds. Then he threw his head back and let out a bark of a laugh. It wasn't a kind laugh. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated pride and approval. It was the sound of a lion recognizing the killer instinct in its cub. That's my girl, he said, his eyes gleaming with a fierce light. That's my goddamn girl. What do you need from me? 2 things, I said. Access to your top legal team for when the fallout comes. And your complete silence until it's over. Done, he said, picking up his phone. Judith, get me Philip Abernathy on the line. And then get me the head of accounting. Let me ask you, what would you do if your husband tried to replace you after 17 years? Would you stay and fight? Would you walk away? Would you take back everything your family gave? Or would you do exactly what I did? Because trust me, my story doesn't end here. The real drama hasn't even begun. The next few weeks were a masterclass in deception, a performance worthy of an Olivier Award. I played the part of the wounded but resigned wife to perfection. When Oliver's family, his bewildered, mousy mother and his gruff, silent father from Coventry, came down for the Nika ceremony in Birmingham, I was gracious. I wished Oliver well on the phone. I sent a large, expensive floral arrangement to the bride's family home with a card that read, "Wishing you all happiness." Oliver reported back that they were astonished and impressed by my grace. I'll bet they were. My own family was a different story. My mother was horrified, but characteristically for all the wrong reasons. A second wife, Eleanor? The scandal. What will people say at the club? Can't you just handle it quietly? Pay her off. I looked at her, this woman who had taught me the art of invisibility, and I felt nothing but a distant, weary pity. "No, Mother," I said, my voice flat. "I can't." My sister Isabel, however, was my rock, my co-conspirator. Izzy was the family rebel, a brilliant, chaotic artist living in a paint-splattered flat in Shoreditch. She had married for love to a gentle, penniless musician and was deliriously happy. She had always seen Oliver for the hollow man he was. "Sell it all, Ellie," she'd hiss down the phone late at night, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Sell the bloody toothbrushes. Salt the earth. I'll bring the matches and a bottle of Bali to celebrate." Her fierce, unwavering support was a beacon in my strange new world of clandestine planning. I became a secret agent in my own life. By day I was Mummy. I drove the Range Rover to collect the twins from their prep school in Chelsea, their bright blazers a splash of color against the black leather seats. I helped Leo with his GCSE art project. I listened patiently to Chloe's intricate friendship dramas. I was the calm, stable center of their universe. But at night, after the house was quiet and Oliver was out celebrating with his new fiancée, I was the general of a silent, invisible army. My laptop glowed in the dark of my study. First, the house. Using a discreet, high-end international property agent recommended by my father's firm, we did everything online. I explained the situation with brutal honesty. I needed a cash buyer, someone who could complete in under 4 weeks, and someone who valued speed and privacy above all else. In that rarefied stratosphere of London property, with foreign money flooding in, it wasn't a difficult request. A deal was struck with a Singaporean investment fund looking for a prime London portfolio addition. The price was slightly under market value for the speed of the transaction, but it was still a breathtaking, life-changing sum of money. The contracts were drawn up. The completion date was set for 1 p.m. on Saturday, 28th of May. The day of the wedding. Next, the cars. A specialist dealer in collectible and luxury automobiles in Surrey was contacted. The Jaguar and the Range Rover were both low-mileage, high-spec and highly desirable. A price was agreed upon. They would be collected by transporter on the morning of Saturday, 28th of May. Then the contents. This was the most complex part, the part that brought a grim, satisfying smile to my face. Every pin in that house. The custom-made Italian furniture, the art, mostly expensive prints. Oliver didn't have the taste for real art. The silk rugs, the crystal chandeliers. And most importantly, his things. The rows of bespoke suits from Savile Row in his walk-in wardrobe. His collection of absurdly expensive watches, which he liked to leave casually on the bedside table. His gleaming set of titliced golf clubs. The entire wine cellar. I contacted a high-end auction house for the valuables and a separate estate clearance firm for the rest. They were professional, efficient, and unsentimental. They would send 2 teams and 2 lorries. They would arrive at 1:30 p.m. on Saturday, 28th of May, and would clear the entire house in under 3 hours. The timing had to be perfect. They would arrive the moment the house was no longer legally mine. Finally, I planned our escape. I researched towns far from the toxic orbit of London. I wanted somewhere beautiful, historic, and quiet. A place to heal, a place to breathe. I settled on the city of Bath. It felt right, a city built on healing waters. I used a portion of my own substantial savings, the generous allowance my father had always given me, which I had shrewdly invested over the years, to put a down payment on a beautiful 5-bedroom Georgian townhouse in the Circus, one of the most iconic and elegant streets in the country. It was smaller than the house, less ostentatious, but it had a soul. I arranged for school transfers, telling the headmasters in London that we were relocating for a new family business opportunity in the West Country. Lies, all of it. But aren't lies just a different kind of truth when you're fighting a war for your own life? I packed for myself and the 4 children in secret, a shadow moving through the house I was about to abandon. A few suitcases at a time filled with our most important and sentimental belongings were hidden in the depths of my wardrobe. The children's favorite books, their most cherished soft toys, my grandmother's pearls, the battered photo albums filled with pictures of them as babies. The rest, I realized with a startling clarity, was just stuff. Things. Objects that could be replaced. Things that meant nothing. Oliver noticed nothing. He was utterly, blissfully consumed with his own glorious narrative. He was the conquering hero, the magnanimous patriarch, the man who had it all. He was busy with wedding preparations, suit fittings, and tasting menus for the reception. He was busy on the phone with Zara, his new spiritual muse, his voice soft and intimate in a way it hadn't been with me for over a decade. He'd come home late, smelling of her sharp perfume and champagne, and give me a cursory peck on the cheek, his eyes already looking past me, calculating the logistics of his grand new life. He saw me as a piece of furniture, a permanent, reliable fixture in the house he was about to bring his new wife into. He never once asked how I was truly feeling. He never once sat the children down to talk to them. Their world was about to be turned upside down, and he was arguing with the calligrapher over the font on the place cards. The night before the wedding, he was practically giddy, high on his own impending triumph. "You've been amazing through this, Ellie," he said, pouring himself a celebratory glass of my father's whiskey. "Truly. Far more than I had a right to expect. You've shown such class." "I just want you to be happy, Oliver," I said, the lie tasting like ash and bile in my mouth. But it was the last significant lie I would ever have to tell him. The day of his white wedding arrived. Saturday, 28th of May. It was a perfect, glorious day. The sky over London was a brilliant, cloudless blue. A perfect day for a celebration. A perfect day for a demolition. I woke the children early. "We're going on an adventure today," I told them, my voice a marvel of bright manufactured cheerfulness. The younger ones, Mia and Sam, were immediately excited, bouncing on their beds. Leo and Chloe, older and more perceptive, were more subdued. "What about Dad's wedding?" Chloe asked, her brow furrowed with the anxiety of a born people-pleaser who hated breaking the rules. "Aren't we supposed to go?" "Dad will be fine," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "This is our day. A special day just for us." I didn't go to the church. I couldn't bear to watch the spectacle. I couldn't bear to see the woman who was a symptom of my husband's disease, not the cause of it. He would have done this with her or with someone else. His ego demanded a younger, more adoring audience. My only role in the drama was to fade gracefully into the background. But I had decided to rewrite the ending. Have you ever watched a man destroy his own life with his own hands, and then blame you when he finally feels the consequences? Well, that's exactly what happened next. And trust me, from this moment on, things went from shocking to unbelievable. Before we go deeper, make sure you subscribe for more gripping true life stories. While he was at the fashionable church in Chelsea, standing at the altar and making vows he was genetically incapable of honoring, I stood in my kitchen and made my first call. It was to the car collection company. "I'm ready for you. The keys to both the Range Rover and the Jaguar are under the large terracotta pot by the back door." At precisely 1 p.m., as the newlyweds were signing the register, my phone buzzed. It was an email from my solicitor, Mr. Abernathy. The subject line was a single word: completed. A multi-million-pound sum of money minus fees had just landed in my trust account. The house in Kensington, the gilded cage I had lived in for 17 years, was no longer mine. It belonged to a faceless fund in Singapore. The ceremony ended. My phone lit up with a text from my sister, Izzy, who had bravely agreed to be my spy at the wedding, dressed in her most outrageous Vivienne Westwood outfit. "He's married. She's in a mountain of lace. He looks insufferably smug. Now on to the reception. The clock is ticking, Agent Ellie." The reception was being held at a 5-star hotel in Mayfair. While the 150 guests were sipping champagne and eating miniature foie gras burgers, I made my main call. It was to the clearance company manager, a burly man named Steve. "It's Eleanor Vance. The house is sold and empty of inhabitants. You can begin." Within 15 minutes it began. 2 enormous lorries, larger than I had imagined, rumbled down our quiet Kensington street, their arrival causing curtains to twitch in the neighboring mansions. A team of 6 men, dressed in navy blue overalls, efficient and silent, swarmed into the house. They had their list. They were brutally, beautifully methodical. I stood in the grand hallway, a clipboard in my hand that I didn't need, directing them like a battlefield commander. The suits, all of them. The watch collection in the top drawer of the master bedroom. The golf clubs. That hideous abstract painting in the hall he bought at a charity auction. All of it. The children watched, wide-eyed and silent, from the doorway of the now empty sitting room. "Mummy, what's happening?" Mia asked, her little face a mask of confusion, her voice small in the echoing space. I knelt down in front of her, taking her small hands in mine. "We're spring cleaning, darling. A very, very big spring clean. We're getting rid of all the old, dusty things to make way for new, lovely things." It was the simplest, truest way I could explain it. I watched as 17 years of a life were dismantled, catalogued and carried out the front door. The sofa where he told me he was taking a second wife. The vast marital bed, a cold and empty continent between us for years. The long mahogany dining table where we had hosted so many joyless, performative dinner parties. It was a strangely, powerfully cathartic experience. I felt no sadness. I felt no nostalgia. It just felt light. The weight of all those things all those years was finally being lifted. The final call came just after 4 p.m. It was Izzy, her voice a giddy, triumphant hiss over the background din of the party. "They're on the dance floor now, Ellie. The first dance. It's some dreadful Ed Sheeran monstrosity. He looks like the cat that got the cream, the Cheshire Cat, and the entire dairy farm. The bride is weeping with joy. Everyone is clapping. It's utterly vomit-inducingly nauseating. Are you ready to pull the trigger?" I looked around the house. It was a hollow shell. Dust motes danced in the shafts of afternoon sun where our furniture used to be. The walls were bare, marked with the pale ghosts of picture frames. The only things left were the 5 suitcases we had packed, standing sentinel by the front door. "The trigger was pulled hours ago," I said, a smile in my voice. "It's done, Izzy. Everything is gone." "Oh my God, Ellie, you are my absolute hero," she breathed. "What now?" "Hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell for more stories." "Now," I said, hanging up the phone and turning to my children, "our adventure begins." I loaded the children and our few suitcases into the pre-booked Mercedes S-Class that would take us to Paddington Station. As we pulled away from the curb, I allowed myself one last look at the house. A bright red "sold" sign was being hammered into the immaculate front lawn by a young man in a shiny suit. The clearance men were just closing the doors on the second lorry. It was a scene of controlled, quiet, magnificent chaos. We boarded the first-class carriage of the 5:15 p.m. train to Bath Spa. As it slid out of London, the city I had always called home, I didn't look back. I looked forward at the faces of my children. Leo was silent, staring out the window, a storm of complex emotions in his 16-year-old eyes, but I saw a flicker of understanding, of relief. Chloe was crying quietly, not for her father, but for the life and friends she was leaving. The twins were excited, treating it like a grand holiday, chattering about what our new house would be like. I gathered them close, my 4 beautiful, resilient children. We were a unit. We were a family. We arrived in Bath as the evening sun cast a warm, honeyed glow over the city's famous Georgian stone buildings. Our new house was waiting. It was empty, save for 4 new beds, a simple kitchen table, and 6 chairs that I had ordered to be delivered that afternoon. It wasn't a palace, but it was ours. Truly ours. There were no ghosts here. A few days later, after we had settled into a gentle, quiet rhythm, exploring the Royal Crescent, buying new duvets at the local department store, finding the best bakery, the inevitable happened. Settling the kids into their new rooms. Boxes. The air smelling of fresh paint and new beginnings. My phone kept vibrating. 39 missed calls. Then 40. Then 48. Voicemail after voicemail. At first he sounded confused. Then angry. Then furious. Then desperate. "What have you done? Answer the phone. Now. You can't just sell everything. This is illegal. You've humiliated me. Do you know what you're doing? Where are you? I'm coming to get my children." Oh, he was panicking. But I didn't pick up. Not once. Because he needed to feel for the first time what I felt for years. Powerless. Unheard. Disrespected. Invisible. And my silence was the one punishment he couldn't swallow. As I placed the kids' clothes in their wardrobes, I felt lighter. For 17 years that house in Manchester felt like a cage. Oh, I was free. My phone, which had been blissfully silent, rang with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a message notification appeared. It was Oliver. His voice was not the calm, superior, patronizing tone I was used to. It was a strangled, high-pitched squawk of pure, unadulterated panic and disbelief. Eleanor, what the hell is going on? I came home, to the house. It's empty. Everything is gone. The curtains are gone. There's a sold sign on the lawn. The bloody cars are gone. Eleanor, this isn't funny. My suits. My watches. My golf clubs. Call me back right now. This is insane. The bank called. They said your father canceled my retainer. What have you done? What have you done? I listened to the message twice. And then I did something I hadn't done in 17 years. I laughed. A real, deep, gut-wrenching belly laugh. A laugh of pure, unbridled freedom. A laugh that brought tears to my eyes. Then I calmly blocked his number. My father called later that day. His solicitor has been in touch with Abernathy, he said, sounding thoroughly, deeply amused. They're threatening legal action. Accusing you of theft, fraud, and malicious destruction of property. Can they do that? I asked, a small cold knot of fear tightening in my stomach for the first time. Let them try, my father scoffed, and I could hear the grin in his voice. The house was in your trust. You sold your own asset. The cars were registered to you. You sold your own property. The contents? They were possessions within your matrimonial home, which you, as the sole remaining occupant, disposed of before vacating the property you had just sold. He might try to argue a claim to a share of the value, but since every penny he's had for the last 17 years came from me, and since he has just very publicly entered into a new marriage, I suspect my lawyers will have a rather enjoyable time with this. He has no money to fight us, Ellie. He is a man without resources. Don't you worry about a single thing. You are fireproof. And just like that, the fear vanished, replaced by a calm, steady certainty. I was the daughter of Sir Alistair Finch. I was fireproof. The next day Oliver did something bold. Stupid but bold. He went to the Harrington estate. My mother saw him first. He marched through the gates, shouting like a man who had lost everything he never owned. Where is she? Lady Evelyn, where's your daughter? My mother stepped out of the glass conservatory, calm as ever. Her voice was cool, composed, cutting. Oliver, lower your voice. This is not a marketplace. He stopped shouting, but not because he respected her. Because you don't challenge Evelyn Harrington. Nobody does. Did you help her do this? He asked. No, she said. I did it myself. Oliver's eyes widened. My mother continued, you embarrassed my daughter publicly. You brought another woman into a marriage we supported financially for almost 2 decades. You took advantage of her loyalty and our generosity. She stepped closer. And you thought you would walk in here with another wife while living in a house we gave you? Oliver swallowed. When you decided to take a second wife, my mother said, you decided to take care of yourself. He had no answer. Because there was none. If you're following this story, don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss what happens next. It shocked even me when I lived it. So here I am. In a beautiful new city, watching the morning mist rise over the green hills of Somerset from my bedroom window. I am building a new life with my 4 children. A real one. It's not always easy. The children miss their friends. I sometimes miss the thoughtless convenience of my old life. I am learning to cook again, to manage a budget, to be a hands-on mother in a way I never was before. But then I wake up in the morning in a house that is truly mine, a life that is truly my own, and I feel a profound peace that no amount of money could ever buy. I am no longer a good, submissive wife. I am no longer Mrs. Oliver Vance. I am just Eleanor. And for the first time in my adult life, it is more than enough. My husband, my ex-husband I should say, is, I'm told by Izzy, currently living with his new wife's parents in a crowded terraced house in Birmingham, embroiled in a legal battle he cannot possibly win. By Thursday, Oliver managed to find a solicitor in Manchester. He filed an emergency petition claiming, I kidnapped the children, I sold marital property without his consent. I denied him custody and I abandoned our marital home. He conveniently left out the second wife part. Classic Oliver. My father hired an entire legal team from London, led by Sir Malcolm Clinton. a man with one of the sharpest legal brains in the UK. During the first hearing, the judge asked Oliver, "Mr. Lawson, how long have you lived in the house your wife sold?" 17 years, he said proudly. "And who purchased the house originally?" He paused, lifted, cleared his throat. Here parents. Who maintained the home financially? Another pause. Her family, mostly. And the cars? The same. And your personal income? I wasn't employed consistently. The judge leaned back. So you are claiming ownership of property that you did not purchase, did not maintain, and were gifted by your wife's family? Oliver blinked rapidly. His solicitor looked like he wanted to disappear. "Mr. Lawson," the judge said firmly, "from a legal standpoint, your claim is very weak." Vanessa sat in the back row, her confidence shrinking with every sentence. For the first time, Oliver realized he had walked into a war he couldn't win. He went from a lord of the manor in Kensington to an unemployed guest in a semi-detached in the Midlands in the space of a single dance. After all, his entire life was built on my father's sweat. He had just been borrowing the shine from it for a while. I simply turned off the light. 3 weeks later, as I tried settling into Leeds life, new school runs, new routines, an unexpected person reached out to me. A woman named Sienna Rowe, 27 years old. Soft voice, kind eyes. Lived in Birmingham. She sent me an email with the subject, "I think we need to talk. It's about Oliver." At first I ignored it. But she emailed again. Then again. Finally I agreed to a call. Her voice trembled on the phone. "Eleanor, I'm so sorry for everything you're going through. But I need to tell you something." I sat down. My heart beating in my ears. I was seeing Oliver before he married Vanessa. I froze. She continued. "Please don't be angry. I didn't know about you at first. He lied. He said he was separated. He said you didn't care about him. He said he was living in his house." I closed my eyes. Of course. Oliver wasn't just unfaithful. He was a serial liar. A manipulator. "How long were you with him?" I asked quietly. 2 years, she whispered. 2 years. Before Vanessa. Before the second wife nonsense. Before his entire betrayal came into the open. Oliver had been cheating long before he announced he was taking a second wife. Suddenly everything made sense. The late night calls. The emotional distance. The arrogance. I thanked her for telling me. And for the first time since everything happened, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Because finally the truth was showing itself. Then my children begin to ask questions. Children may be young, but they are not stupid. That evening while cooking pasta, my daughter Raina asked, "Mum, why isn't Dad calling us anymore?" I froze. Then Lena asked, "And why did he marry another woman?" Noah clenched his jaw. Gabriel stared at his plate. They deserved the truth. Not the ugly parts, but the honest ones. "Your father made choices without thinking about how they would affect us," I said gently. "But you are safe. And you are loved. And nothing that has happened is your fault." Raina nodded, though her eyes were shiny with tears. "Will we ever go back home?" she asked. I smiled softly. "We are home." But the truth? I wasn't sure. We were still rebuilding. Still healing. And healing takes time. As we settled into life in Leeds, someone unexpected began helping me and the kids. His name was Adrian Cole, a widowed father of 2 girls living 2 houses away. Soft-spoken. Warm smile. A paramedic who often checked in on us. Started small. Helping carry boxes. Fixing a loose door hinge. Dropping by with groceries. Offering to drive the kids to school when I was overwhelmed. He wasn't intrusive. He wasn't flirtatious. He wasn't trying to fill a role. He was simply kind. One afternoon he said quietly, "If you ever need help, I'm around." Not as a man trying to replace anyone. Just as someone who understands what it's like to start over. His wife had passed 2 years ago. Pain recognizes pain. Healing recognizes healing. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. Not as someone's daughter. Not as someone's wife. Not as someone's mother. Just me. Before I continue to the next, if this story is touching your heart, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us bring more powerful real-life stories. Of course, Oliver didn't give up. He hired a private investigator. And one rainy Wednesday afternoon, He showed up in Leeds. The kids were at school. I was home alone folding laundry. When I heard the knock, I assumed it was a delivery. But when I opened the door, there he was. Hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell for more stories. Oliver. Standing in the rain. Hair wet. Eyes red. Suit crumpled. He looked nothing like the proud man who danced at his second wedding. Please, I'm sorry, he whispered. My heartbeat slowed. Not from fear. From the cold realization. This man was a stranger. He stepped closer. Please, talk to me. But what he said next, that changed everything. Vanessa left me. I blinked. What? She said she didn't sign up for this mess. He thought I had money. He thought I owned houses. When she realized everything was yours, she walked out. He swallowed. She said I'm useless. He looked up at me desperately. Eleanor, take me back. Please. And in that moment I realized, he never loved these women. He never loved me. He loved comfort, stability, security. He loved the life my family gave him. Not me. Not us. Not the marriage. And now that it was gone, he wanted it back. But I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't pity him. I simply said the one sentence he never expected. Oliver, I don't know you anymore. Have you ever seen a man realize he has lost the one person who held his entire life together? The moment when pride turns to panic, and panic turns to regret? That was Oliver, standing on my doorstep in Leeds, soaked, desperate, abandoned by the woman he replaced me with. But this story was far from over. Oliver stood there, rain running down his face, looking less like the husband I once knew, and more like a broken version of himself. "My love, please," he whispered. "I've lost everything. I've lost Vanessa. I've lost the house. I've lost my children." He took a shaky breath. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. Typical. Isn't it funny how some men only recognize your value when the comfort they enjoyed collapses? My voice was firm. Controlled. Oliver, I warned you without speaking. You ignored me loudly. He swallowed, eyes pleading. I was confused. I made mistakes. I let people influence me. People? That was his excuse? Who influenced you to cheat for 2 years? I asked quietly. Sienna, Vanessa, or the other one you thought I wouldn't find out about? His eyes widened. He stepped back slightly. He didn't know I knew. He didn't know the truth had already reached me. He stammered. Eleanor, it was, I cut in. And you know it. For a moment he went silent. Then the begging started again. Take me back. We can repair this. We can start over. We can fix our family. I looked at him carefully. Why now, Oliver? Is your second wife left? Or because you finally realized everything you called yours was never yours? He looked away. That answered everything. When the door finally closed, gently but firmly between us, I felt my lungs clear. My heart settle. My spirit center. For the first time in 17 years, I felt peace. That you'd think Oliver would disappear after that humiliation, right? No, the next morning he started sending long messages. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was under pressure. You know I'm a good father. We can fix this. Don't destroy our home. I'm sorry. Please. But broken men don't apologize because they've changed. They apologize because their comfort is threatened. That I didn't respond. By the afternoon he changed tone. You're heartless. You're turning my kids against me. You sold everything to embarrass me. You'll regret this. You think you're smart. No acknowledgement of his betrayal. No accountability. Just wounded ego. I went to pick the children from school in silence. The rain had dried. The streets of Roundhay were calm. But inside me, a storm had finally ended. Obviously, Oliver showing up in Leeds didn't stay hidden for long. That evening Noah knocked on my bedroom door. Mum, is Dad here in Leeds? My heart sank. Yes, I said honestly. He came earlier. Did you talk to him? Gabriel asked. I nodded. Is he staying? Raina whispered. No, I said softly. He isn't. There was a long silence. Then Noah, my oldest, my quietest, said, Mum, we don't want to go back. We don't want him shouting. We don't want his excuses. We don't want to be around his new wife. The younger girls nodded. My heart broke a little. Children should never have to choose between parents. But Oliver created the situation. Not me. I hugged them all. You're safe, I said. You're staying here. With me. Promise? Lena asked. I promise. And I meant every word. Just when I thought I'd seen every twist, life reminded me that betrayal always has extra layers. The next day around noon I received a message from an unknown number. Hi. It's Vanessa. We need to talk. It's urgent. I froze. Oliver's second wife. The woman who danced at her white wedding while I sold the house underneath her feet. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later she sent another message. Please. It's about Oliver. And you need to know this. Against my better judgment I agreed to a call. Her voice was nothing like I expected. No arrogance. No pride. Just fear. Eleanor. I'm sorry. Very sorry. I didn't know the full story. Of course she didn't. He told me you were separated, she continued. He said the house was his. He said you didn't want him anymore. I closed my eyes. Here we go again. Men like Oliver don't just lie. They create entire fictional worlds to justify their actions. But then she said something that froze me completely. I didn't leave him because of the money, she whispered. I left him because the other woman contacted me. I blinked. The other woman? I repeated. Yes. Her name is Sienna. I felt something shift inside me. She told me she'd been with Oliver for years. Before me. Through me. Even after the traditional wedding. I swallowed hard. She said he promised to marry her too. 3 women. 1 man. One giant web of lies. Vanessa continued. She said he told her he loved her more than anyone. That he married me for appearance. That he stayed with you for comfort. I felt numb. And she said Oliver got another woman pregnant. My heart stopped. Another woman. Pregnant? I gripped the edge of the table. Are you sure? I whispered. Yes, she said quietly. She sent me the ultrasound. I sat in silence after that call. Everything inside me felt heavy. Not because Oliver cheated. I had already accepted that. Not because he married another woman. I had already punished that. But because he had created chaos in the lives of multiple women. Without guilt, without remorse, without shame. So I wasn't the only victim. Vanessa was a victim. Sienna was a victim. Even the new woman, whoever she was a victim. And the unborn child? That child was innocent. The weight of the truth was suffocating. I realized something. Oliver's betrayal wasn't personal. It was habitual. Systemic. Deep-rooted. He didn't just fall into a mistake. He built a lifestyle out of deception. And for 17 years, I slept next to a stranger. That evening while I was trying to regain control of my thoughts, someone knocked gently on the door. It was Adrian, my neighbor. He held a small takeaway container. I made shepherd's pie, he said softly. You looked tired yesterday. Thought you could use a warm meal. His kindness came so naturally. So softly. So sincerely. Hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell for more stories. We sat in the kitchen. The kids were upstairs. The house smelled of spices and comfort. I don't know how, but he sensed my heaviness. Rough day? He asked quietly. I nodded. He didn't force me to talk. He didn't ask for details. He just sat there, steady, calm, safe. Whatever it is, he said, you'll handle it. You're stronger than you think. His voice was so warm that my eyes stung with unexpected tears. For a moment, I let myself breathe. Thank you, I whispered. He smiled. Anytime. No pressure. No expectations. No hidden motives. Just compassion. It was the first time in years a man had spoken to me without taking something. And in that moment I realized something powerful. I didn't miss Oliver. I missed being treated with kindness. 2 days later, Oliver returned. But this time, he wasn't begging. He was angry. Mia, we need to talk, he snapped. He pushed past me into the hallway. That alone told me how much he never respected boundaries. He faced me, breathing heavily. Why are people calling me about Sienna? Why is Vanessa talking to you? Why is everything turning against me? Because the truth is louder than your lies, I said calmly. He slammed his fist on the side table. Don't talk to me like that. I am still your husband. I looked him in the eyes. No, Oliver. You stopped being my husband the moment you married another woman. He froze. Then his tone softened again. that manipulative softness he used whenever he wanted something. Mia, we can fix this. Don't let outsiders. Outsiders? I interrupted. You mean the mistresses? Or the pregnant one? His face drained of color. How do you even know about that? He whispered. I know everything. He swallowed hard. His entire facade crumbled. Mia, please. I can't lose you. But he didn't want me. He wanted the life my family built. He stepped forward trying to hold my hand. Let's start over. Please. I stepped back. No. He blinked. What do you mean no? I mean no, I repeated. No jailing. No begging. No manipulation. No more second chances. I pointed toward the door. Get out. He didn't move. Eleanor. Get out. My voice didn't rise, but it carried a strength I didn't know I had. Finally, Oliver stepped back, looked at me one last time, and left. This time, for good. So I ask you, did I do wrong? Was my revenge too cruel, too absolute? I dismantled a man's life, a life he had grown so very comfortable in. I took everything. But didn't he try to take my identity, my dignity, my future, my sanity? He wanted 2 wives, 2 families, 2 lives built on my family's fortune. Now he has one, and for the first time in his life he has to build it himself. My children are doing well. If you were in my shoes, your soul worn down to a fine powder by 17 years of quiet neglect, only to be told you were being graciously allowed to coexist with your own replacement, what would you do? Would you have smiled and kept polishing that hollow, beautiful Fabergé until it crumbled to dust in your hands? Or would you have picked up a hammer, swung with all your might, and smashed it into a million liberating pieces? Then Al started dating Mr. Adrian Cole. It started with a wave. A simple, neighborly gesture exchanged across the fence that separated our homes. Mr. Adrian had moved in 5 years ago, a quiet man with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. Everyone in the neighborhood knew he had lost his wife to cancer, and though he rarely spoke about it, the grief lingered in his posture, in the way he sometimes stared into the distance as if searching for something lost. I'd always admired his resilience. Raising 2 teenage daughters alone couldn't have been easy, yet he did it with grace. Our interactions were brief. Hellos, occasional chats about the weather, and once, a shared laugh over a mischievous squirrel that had raided both our gardens. But something shifted last December. He invited me in and we ended up talking for hours. That night felt different. There was warmth not just from the drinks or the festive lights, but from the way he looked at me, curious, appreciative, maybe even hopeful. I left with a flutter in my chest and a question I hadn't dared ask myself before. Could this be something more? We started spending more time together. Coffee on Saturday mornings, walks around the estate, and long conversations about life, parenting, and the books we loved. Mr. Adrian Cole was thoughtful, intelligent, and surprisingly funny. He had a dry wit that caught me off guard and a way of listening that made me feel seen. It wasn't long before we acknowledged the obvious. We were dating. At first, it felt like a second chance. The idea of love had become distant, almost abstract. But with Adrian it felt tangible again. He was respectful, never rushed anything, and always made sure I felt comfortable. His daughters were polite, if a bit reserved, and I tried not to intrude too much into their space. But as the weeks turned into months, cracks began to show. It started subtly. He'd cancel plans last minute, citing exhaustion or needing to spend time with his girls. I understood. Parenting is demanding. But the frequency of these cancellations grew. When we did meet, he seemed distracted, often lost in thought. I'd ask if everything was okay and he'd smile and say, just tired. One evening I brought up the idea of us going away for a weekend. A short trip to relax or even just a quiet resort nearby. He hesitated, then said, I'm not sure the girls would be comfortable with that. I nodded, but inside I felt a pang. We weren't just dating each other. We were navigating the delicate terrain of grief, memory, and family. The real turning point came during a dinner at my place. We were laughing over a story from his university days when he suddenly grew quiet. I asked what was wrong and he said, this reminds me of her. She used to make talk just like this. I froze. It wasn't jealousy. I respected his love for his late wife. But in that moment I realized I was competing with a ghost. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but inevitably. His heart was still tethered to someone who no longer walked this earth. And no matter how kind or patient I was, I couldn't fill that space. We talked about it. He admitted he wasn't sure he was ready. That he cared for me deeply but felt guilty whenever he enjoyed our time together. That his daughters were still grieving and he didn't want to disrupt their world with a new relationship. I appreciated his honesty, but it hurt. I tried to hold on. I told myself love was about patience, about understanding. But the emotional distance grew. He stopped initiating contact and I found myself always reaching out, always waiting. The warmth that once filled our conversations turned tepid, then cold. Eventually I asked him directly, "Do you still want this?" He looked at me with those kind eyes and said, "I don't know." That was my answer. We parted amicably. No drama, no harsh words. Just two adults acknowledging that timing, grief, and circumstance had conspired against them. I cried that night, not because I hated him but because I had hoped. I had dared to believe in love again and it hadn't worked out. But I don't regret it. Dating Mr. Adrian Cole taught me that love after loss is complicated. That healing isn't linear and that sometimes the heart needs more time than we expect. I learned to be vulnerable again, to open myself to possibility. And though it didn't end in romance, it gave me clarity. We still wave across the fence. Sometimes we chat, sometimes we don't. There's no bitterness, just a quiet understanding. He's still a good man and I wish him peace. As for me, I'm learning to embrace my own journey. One step, one breath, one day at a time. After everything that happened, after the betrayal, the humiliation, the second wife, the secret wedding, the disrespect to my family, the loss, the running, the rebuilding, there is one thing I can say with a full chest. Peace is expensive and I was finally willing to pay the price. Yes, Adrian left. Yes, Vanessa left him too. Yes, their plans collapsed like a house without pillars. But guess what? My life did not collapse with them. I rebuilt myself. I rebuilt my confidence. I rebuilt my home. I rebuilt my joy. Moving with my children was not running away. It was choosing life. It was choosing sanity over chaos. Healing over bitterness. Dignity over drama. Future over familiar pain. And today when I wake up and hear my children laughing, when I see my daughter help her younger brother with homework, when I hear them say, "Mom, you are the strongest woman we know," I know I did the right thing. So to anyone listening right now, remember, sometimes you must lose the man to find yourself. Sometimes you must walk away to save your future. Sometimes the ending is the beginning you prayed for. Before you go, if this story touched you, inspired you, or opened your eyes, please hit the subscribe button. Turn on your notification bell. Drop a comment. What would you do in her shoes? Like and share this video so it reaches someone who needs this message. Your support keeps this channel alive and helps us tell more powerful, life-changing stories. Don't make decisions in anger. But don't remain in a situation